Thank you for joining us today. We are the International Gamer Pubcast, aka the IGP. My name is Jeremy. I also go by JJ. I am the host for this podcast, and I'm joined by Reese and Richard. So why exactly are we doing a game podcast? There's a lot of gaming related podcasts out there, but basically we work in the industry, more on the business side, but we have a big interest in the consumer side of games. We all play, but we have completely different tastes, different play styles. Some of us are on console, other of us are on mobile or on PC. And most importantly, we love to get drunk together. So we decided we're already talking about games while getting drunk. We might as well record it and post it on the internet for everybody to hear, whether that's a good idea for us or not. So let's get right into it.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers. So we are ending 2019, I think, with a bang in video games. After 2018, it was a little bit unclear how this year would go, especially because of how much great content we all got to experience in 2018 between amazing Switch ports that were coming, as well as new God of War, the Spider-Man game, just a whole lot of really fantastic games. But 2019 still held itself together pretty well. Obviously, everybody is talking about what the game of the year is for them. So what we're going to do is run through all of our games of the year, our individual games of the year. And then we're going to go ahead and talk about the games that defined the decade for us. It's the end of the 2010s. Major stepping stone for the games industry in general. And there were a lot of innovations and trendsetters along the way. And this is a perfect opportunity to recognize all of those games and talk about how exactly they influenced the industry to become what it is today and be a part of the games that we love playing in 2019. So we're going to start with our games of the year. I don't know about you guys, but it was a tough choice for me. So what exactly did you guys pick this year?
For me, it was so tough as well. Like you mentioned earlier, 2018 was a fucking incredible year for games. Like you had Red Dead, you had like everything you mentioned earlier, God of War. It was insane. But this year for me has been like almost up there with 2018. It's been kind of what 2018 was in quality. This year has been in pure diverseness and just complete innovation. But for me, my top pick is going to be Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice. And I'm pretty much a big console gamer. That's the main platform I play on. And I loved Demon Souls back on the PS3 back in the day, which was kind of the first big Soulsborne game. But it wasn't played very much. But From Software really came into their own with the Dark Souls series. And that's when it kind of became more ubiquitous. This is a new genre. Everybody was loving it. It kind of had more mainstream appeal. But for me, I enjoyed those games. I enjoyed the challenge, but they just felt so clunky and floaty, right? Bloodborne was a bit faster paced, back in 2015, but still it left something to be desired for me. I loved the art style, the gothic kind of, Victorian British style was super cool, but again, the combat for me left something to be desired, rolling around and just kind of being all floaty just didn't work. But then kind of Sekiro got announced a couple of years back and, got me interested, more samurai style, a bit faster paced. And then I was like, okay, this has really piqued my interest. And as soon as I played it, I knew, finally I understand the whole Soulsborne trend. It was, challenging, if anything more challenging than those previous games, but it had the mobility. You can jump, you can zip around the map like crazy. When you hold down the stick all the way forward, your character actually runs, and it was just incredible to me. It's kind of also in the Soulsborne games, it's more about rolling and dodging, but in Sekiro it's more parrying and blocking. And for me, like, that's just a more interesting way to play. It's almost like a fighting game, right? You're kind
A
of
little more satisfying.
Yeah, for sure. Like, you read in your enemy's moves. The first time you fight them, you're gonna get absolutely fucking destroyed. Then the next time you're like, okay, I'll pick up on this kind of move pattern. You kind of get more used to it, and it's like a fighting game. You kind of see the move coming, you parry it, you block it, and yeah, it was just an incredible experience for me, for like the whole like samurai, like feudal Japan setting, the mobility, just the challenge, like everything came together for me, and like I finally understand this kind of Soulsborne trend. Like, everybody's been raving about it for years. I kind of was a passive kind of, you know, enjoyer of it, but never really got totally into it. Bloodborne was almost there, but this kind of like pushed me over the edge. Like, yeah, fuck yeah, this genre is amazing. Like the From Software have really worked over the years to get the mobility, the speed, the combat, the like satisfaction up there. And now, yeah, I'm sold, and I can't wait for their new project with George R.R. Martin as well. It's coming.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be absolutely sick. But yeah.
I'm definitely on the same page. I mean, for me, I really got into Dark Souls 3, and I was very into Bloodborne, but it also felt almost like an unachievable goal at the time. And full disclosure, I don't think I finished Bloodborne. And as you know, I'm only halfway through Sekiro because I think what's so key about that game is really learning every move, and then learning what each move entails. So which action from an enemy requires which reaction from you. And because Sekiro came at a time in my life where I had a lot of other games that I was playing, I kind of couldn't fully get into learning it, and I just started doing that again, but it's been a very satisfying experience. I mean, when you're flowing in that game, you are absolutely flowing, and you feel like the biggest badass. I mean, the only other games that I could think of that really actually make you feel like a samurai or like John Wick would be something like Superhawk, but that takes advantage of kind of like a time slowdown mechanic, whereas this is just pure speed.
Yeah, totally. You can just react to everything in real time. It's not that slow down, that kind of, you know, taking you out of the moment. It's always just pure reflexes, like pure in the moment.
Yeah, so I've never played Sekiro or Dark Souls or any of those games, but I did.
You're
play
a soul
Superhawk.
virgin?
I am a Soulsborne virgin, yes. I'll get into what I play later, but you saying that it feels like being John Wick has, you know, piqued my interest, and I know, Reese, you have often told me that I should buy/play Sekiro.
Just fucking play it, Richie.
Exactly. I still haven't, and I cannot play any games right now because I'm a PC gamer without a graphics card.
You're a runner with no legs.
Yeah. It's like, no, a runner without a heart. Like, I'm a dead man running right now.
Yeah.
No, but like so what, you know, feeling like John Wick, the challenge, is that really the main thing you get out of those games? Because I like competitive games, right? Like Dota, League of Legends, World of Warcraft, so, you know, team-based competitive, PvE, PvP.
Yep.
Is that the same kind of feeling you think you get with Sekiro?
I think for me, like those games you just listed are more like a kind of like team. Everybody brings something to the table. It all comes together. You know, each have your role within that team. But for Sekiro, other Soulsborne games, but especially Sekiro, it's all you, right? This is kind of, you don't have to rely on anybody else. Like, if you fuck up a certain boss or something, it's all your fault. In the end, I think that kind of satisfaction is different. It's more kind of like, sounds cheesy, but, you know, from within, it's independent. It's not, you know, you're not relying on other people. It's hard, and it fucking sucks at times when you're stuck on a boss, but when you finally like get past that, the satisfaction just completely outweighs any of the frustration that I felt until then. Like, it's hard to explain to somebody who hasn't played a Soulsborne game, because it sounds so like elitist, like, oh yeah, you're just not gonna understand it until you play it. It's hard to put into words, but yeah, like I said, the satisfaction of beating a boss outweighs the frustration of kind of learning it all and getting through it. So for me, yeah, my game of the year, hands down.
I mean, I believe you because this game did come out quite early in 2019. I believe in March.
Yeah, no recency bias from Sekiro. No.
Yeah, so I guess we can move on. I'll go with my game of the year because it's more related to Sekiro than Richard's game of the year. My personal game of the year is going to be Control. So I know that that's a game that Reese played as well. But for me, Control actually excelled not only in its gameplay, but in the narrative. I mean, I'm a former, I do have a film major, so I studied film. I love.
Why are you laughing, Richard? Why are you laughing? What did you study?
You sound like my parents, Richard. So gameplay-wise, Control is extremely fun. I mean, the different types of I guess weapon augmentations that you can have are really interesting, and they can change up the way that you play and the way that you fight. But when you're walking through a room and you find a dossier on the table and you open it and you basically read a memo that gives you kind of an insider's view of what a boring day in the life of a super bureaucratic organization like the Federal Bureau of Control looks like. It really does a phenomenal job at building that world into something that's absolutely massive, absolutely incomprehensible, and it puts you in a position where you have reliable narrators, unreliable narrators, the character that you're playing yourself, you're not sure if what she's seeing is complete hallucination at times, or if what she's seeing is actual paranormal activity.
Now, before you continue, do you want to give like just a brief kind of intro to what Control is, the kind of game where it's set and stuff?
Yeah, sure. So Control basically is a third-person action game that's set in a fictional, I guess, United States government organization, much like the FBI, except they have a focus on paranormal activities. And basically, your character, Jesse Faden, shows up to the front steps of the FBC, the Federal Bureau of Control. She basically has this paranormal spirit who's telling her that her brother is in this building. And the FBC, to most people on the street, is completely covered. And it's placed in or surrounding this building called the Old House.
Oldest house.
Oldest house. Yeah. Realizing that there is an outbreak of something called the Hiss, which is a paranormal entity that has taken over the game world and taken over everybody in the FBC that doesn't have protective gear. So all the enemies are basically government workers who've been possessed by this paranormal entity called the Hiss. I think that's a relatively spoiler-free explanation of Control. Maybe down the line we could have a spoiler cast where we really talk about the ins and outs of the narrative.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think it's spoilery to say that Jesse, your character, the protagonist, becomes the director of the FBC. Or what do you reckon? Too spoilery?
No, I don't think that's too spoilery.
No,
but
Richard.
Yeah, so basically to get into why Control for me is the game of the year is really the world building. Basically, you are so drawn to finding these dossiers spread around the world. Any level that I would get into, I'd be fighting a boss, but I would just be basically wanting to defeat the boss so that I could find the dossier that would be in the next room. To give you an idea of an example is there's this big furnace that's in the basement of the Federal Bureau of Control. And there's kind of a side mission where you have to throw these waste barrels into the furnace, and having to find waste barrels to throw in the furnace makes you go around the room, and again there's a dossier on the desk in the far corner of the room, and if you go read it, it's basically a memo from an employee who's complaining about the furnace speaking to her and being essentially a demonic possession. Really, this room that was the furnace room was built into something so much greater, something that could be a complete imagination for this poor employee who had to work down in the furnace all day, every day.
Yeah.
Or it could actually be a possessed furnace.
Yeah.
And even deeper than that, it could be something. This is something that even I imagined for myself. It could be something that Jessie Faden imagined herself, because the oldest house wants her to imagine that. So kind of the realm of possibilities for these sub-narratives in relation to your experience with the game, or my experience with the game, were so deep and kind of meaningful that it wasn't even a contest for me, given even the negatives surrounding Control. I mean, I played on base PlayStation, and the optimization honestly was not done well. So if you're hearing this and wanting to play Control, I recommend not playing Control on a base current generation console. Luckily we don't have sponsors for now. But yeah, I mean, the optimization was not good. I would get in fights consistently where my frame rate would drop way below an acceptable level. But what makes this game of the year for me is that despite all those negatives, I couldn't put this down. I mean, I was going back, I was putting up with all these technical failures, and not even really complaining about them. I mean, I was happy to go through that in order to experience the narrative of this game, and that's not something I've felt in recent years.
Yeah, for sure. Like I played on PS4 Pro, and I still had those like performance issues as well. I think there were even a few on like PC, which is pretty crazy. But like, yeah, like I agree with what you're saying about the whole like storytelling aspect. Like Remedy, they're known for their like environmental storytelling. They're just like their narratives in general. Like they started with like Max Payne, and then like moved on to things like Alan Wake, which were completely narratively driven. Like you find, like you say, dossiers like throughout the world. But yeah, Control was just like, for me, it was my number 2 game of the year. Like, had Sekiro not come out,
we do have very similar tastes.
Yeah, we do.
Like
Richard was right. Richard was right. Okay.
One of us will have to go.
Yeah, exactly. We need to get another.
I do have a question about this, because there's a lot of other games, I think, that have environmental cues to the story. Think about things like Divinity Original Sin, but even the I don't know how to pronounce it, but Deus Ex or Deus Ex.
Yeah, no, Deus Ex.
Yeah, and they had little notes and things around about people or environments or things that are happening in the world.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, I'm not trying to say that this is the first instance of world building or sub-narrative development in games or any other type of medium for that matter. But to me, this is the first instance where the sub-narratives almost mattered more than the main narrative of the game. And on top of that, I think that the way that it was done was so authentic. I might have had some kind of, I guess you'd call it environmental bias, because at the time I was watching Mindhunter, fantastic show about basically the FBI. And so I was very much in the mood for that kind of like bureaucratic environment. When Remedy gave me that bureaucratic environment in a paranormal world, I was already excited, but the fact that you had these memos and situation reports that were completely removed of human emotion and shock at some of the reports that were coming through, and given in such a cold way, it just really was such a fucking brutal experience to read through some of these and think about it. And the setting was just so well developed that for me, this was the only experience in which I was addicted to sub-narratives.
Yeah, and like to also answering Richard's question, like a lot of games have had these kind of like notes you find in the world, like Skyrim, Witcher, blah blah blah. Every game, practically every open world game or RPG has these kind of things. But I think like a lot of these like, you know, side notes in other games, they're written probably by a different narrative like team maybe even than like the main quest line. but in Control it's all linked together. Like, you know, you do a quest about the fridge, like Jeremy said, and then maybe, you know, 5 hours later you'll read like a little memo that like mentions it briefly. Everything kind of links together. And also I feel that it's such like an insane kind of game world, right? You're in this like paranormal, parapsychological like warfare. There's zombies like floating around the hiss basically. And then you're walking through and you read a note about like some governmental worker who's pissed off at Nancy for not changing the beans in the coffee machine. And it's just like, it really just grounds it as well. It's just, and I think that's been a trend with games this year. It's been more funny, right? It's been like kind of humorous. You've had Control with these kind of like funny governmental memos. And then Disco Elysium has been hilarious as well. The Outer Worlds has been, you know, also hilarious. And just, writing and comedy have been like one of the big like kind of saving graces of this year for me.
I just looked and I got a notification that my Dota 2 Immortal statue and Immortal or Roshan statue is being sent, which means that I spent €1,000 on a game that I really don't play anymore.
€1,000.
€1,000 fucking euros.
What is that, like a prize? Well, a prize for spending €1,000
Yes.
on Dota?
You get a physical thing. So I love Dota. I love watching Dota, and I played, like I said, I played 2,800 hours of Dota. But I don't play, this year I've played last year, 2019, I played less than 100 hours of Dota. And Oblivion started
we were talking about Skyrim.
Yes, Oblivion started this. So Skyrim, I mean, I can't remember like DLC or skins for Skyrim. I do remember a lot of mods. I don't remember skins for Skyrim, but we do have to remember that whoever created Skyrim started the whole skin thing.
That was. Go ahead.
It makes sense given Fallout 76 and what that looks like as far as microtransactions go. I mean, it's really interesting to see a game company like Bethesda go from defining what an open world game would look like before open world games were really that big.
Yep.
To actually, I think open world games is probably what's going to define the 2010s down the line.
Yeah, I think so.
Because
I mean, like
it's that amount of travel ability and immersion and all that was really brought in by Skyrim and choice architecture. So actually, speaking of that, if I can transition, I don't know if you guys are done talking about Skyrim.
I mean, like,
any last points?
Like one thing I want to say, like about the horse armor thing, like, you know how like back then that was crazy, and now it's just kind of like par for the course. This like you know you pay a lot of money for cosmetics. I think there's like a dichotomy there with like, you remember the Xbox One, like E3, was it E3 2013 when they unveiled it, and it was always online, and you know all these things that people hated, and then you know basically like the Xbox 360 was top dog, and then with the Xbox One, like the announcement just completely fucked them over because it was always online, like DRM, I guess you call it. But now, like, you know, looking at the climate we're in now, you have Google Stadia, where you always have to be online, like, you know, even like PS4, like you need to be online, like to access your updates and stuff, and that's just normal now, right? Like, and the thing that almost like dethroned Xbox for this generation is now just, you know, normal, like expected. So I think they were just kind of like ahead of the time, like in what they announced. I mean, like, this is completely, you know, separate from the Skyrim discussion, but I thought it's just, you know, bring it up.
I couldn't agree more. So moving on to my personal defining game of the decade, I'm gonna go with LA Noire. LA Noire for me is one of my most important games of the decade. Not only because I'm from LA and playing in LA Noire in the, I guess, early 2000s, and then again I'm currently playing it on 2010s. I'm currently playing it again on the Switch. So now in 2019, 2020, being able to navigate what my childhood city looked like in the 40s was something that was already really amazing. But also, Rockstar kind of had the balls to look at gaming and say, yeah, this is going to be as big as film. This is going to be as important as film. And we're going to take actors who are looking for jobs in film and television. And this is before, you know, a lot of the actors that were in L.A. Noire got brought into Mad Men.
Yeah, wasn't the main detective in L.A. Noire? He was like one of the guys in Mad Men.
What I found out was that actually in L.A. Noire they use the same, this may or may not be correct, but they use the same talent agency that Mad Men ended up using. So there is a massive overlap of actors in L.A. Noire that there were in Mad Men. But kind of taking actors and saying, okay, we're going to put you in a video game, already was kind of seeing the industry for more than it was at the time. Also, in 2019, especially 2018 as well, we really saw a lot of top tier actors moving into the space. Keanu Reeves with Cyberpunk, which is extremely exciting, and then Death Stranding was an absolutely stacked cast. I mean, you would expect that out of a award-winning movie.
It's insane.
But I think that something is happening within games that was similar to a while back with television, where, you know, before movies were the end game. A movie actor would never want to move into the television space. But now television is much more appealing than film. I think you see a lot of really, really, really top tier actors moving into the television space, and the same is happening with gaming as well. I mean, before, voice actors also did motion capture and stuff like that, and they were kind of stars in their own rights, and you kind of see film and television actors moving into that space as well. And I really feel that L.A. Noire pioneered that, and it pioneered not only the narrative cinematic elements that came from using real actors, but also the restrictions that it gave you in the gameplay.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
I think like one of the major reasons it seemed so cinematic, especially at the time, was like the facial capture, right? Like the faces, they looked so real. Like back that, what was it, 2010 you say?
I think that L.A. Noire was, I have a list here, 2011.
Yeah, 2011. So back then, like, you know, faces in games look very static, very unbelievable. But L.A. Noire, I remember it being like one of the first games where, like, you know, the lips would move properly, the expressions in the eyes and stuff. Because the whole crux of the game, right, is to be able to tell whether somebody's telling the truth, lying, or you doubt them. So being able to read those facial expressions.
I mean, expressions were key.
Yeah, exactly. And like now, again, we take that for granted. But back then, like everything was so stiff and rigid.
But talking about story and that type of games that had a good narrative and kind of cinematic quality, Mass Effect. Don't worry, it's not related to it.
True.
It came out in 2007, so you know it's older than 2010. But I feel like in terms of narrative, for me, nothing has really emulated the same kind of grandness as that. You know, you had Mass Effect, you had Dragon Age, and Dragon Age 2 was too small, but it was still great narrative. Dragon Age 3 was
it's
too
underrated,
big but too empty, and Mass Effect 1 was great narrative wise. Gameplay wise, not as good. 2 brought everything together. 3 was, let's not talk about 3.
Hey,
and
the
then Andromeda
was fine.
Andromeda was but so the next step up in this and the next step up in narrative is Disco Elysium.
I've not taken on Disco Elysium yet, but
I started it. I'm not very far.
It's amazing. For those of you who don't know, like Disco Elysium is a like CRPG, computer RPG that came out last year, much in the vein of like something like Divinity, but the way that it approaches its writing and its kind of, you know, character building is crazy. Like, the stat system is like, instead of being like strength, endurance, whatever, it's tied to your like actual character's personality. So like you can put skill points in something like empathy. But like what makes it like so different to other games is that like if you put too many points in the, you know, the empathy skill, your character gets a bit too empathetic. Yeah. So for example, if like, you know, they hear a really sad like story from an NPC, they'll break down and cry, and like you can't go any further. And it's just like little things like that just make it amazing. And the developer, I think I can't pronounce it, but they're like an Eastern European developer, and they kind of like have lots of callbacks to that kind of like post-Soviet time.
I remember their Marxist call out at the Game Awards as
yeah
well.
Yeah, exactly, they did that in the Game Awards, which like speaks volumes. Like they, you know, I think they called out to Marx and Engels, right, or something like that. Like we won't get into politics right now, but
no, we will definitely be getting into
some
politics.
point. At some point,
we were trying to be nice.
Yeah, but not now. But yeah, the way that the whole game is just brings like these kind of like almost revolutionary mechanics to a genre that's been around for years and years, decades even. And like, yeah, like another like thing about it that's so different is that like as you go through the story and you kind of like have these different like talks with different characters, you can like hear maybe something about like somebody being like a twat to women, and then you can internalize a thought about like feminism, and then if you choose to internalize that thought, then, you know, feminism becomes one of your like chat options, so you can be more supportive about women, stuff like that. But they're more kind of like standard options. But then you have things like superstar cop. So hang on, but before I go into that, let me talk more about the kind of, you know, context of the game. You wake up in a hotel room. You have no fucking idea what's going on. You're blackout drunk. You wake up, everything's blurry. What's going on? We've all been there, especially us three. Probably tomorrow morning.
Yes.
No, but yeah, I mean, I think Disco Elysium illustrates what I'm saying, that LA Noire was kind of an antagonist to.
Yeah.
Which is the absolute, not only choice architecture, but I think Disco Elysium in 2020 decade lists.
It came out in
2019.
No, but that's what I'm saying is basically it'll be an influential game. I think a lot of games are gonna apply those mechanics because that is fantastic. I mean, attributes should also affect you negatively at one point.
Yeah.
You can't just keep getting strong without losing another element.
Yeah.
And that's fantastic. But I think that also more what LA Noire was getting at was in that restriction. And I think that also pushes narrative further because you know, choice architecture doesn't always tell the best story.
That's true.
And no matter what game you look at, no matter how deep the choice architecture, there will always be a defining goal and trait for your character that will, unbeknownst to you or known to you, motivate the story forward. And I think that LA Noire really helped pioneer that.
Yeah, true. I think another good example of that is Red Dead Redemption 2, where you have this like big through line of like you know, the main story, but then everything around that you kind of decide what to do. You know, you can make your Arthur into like a really wholesome guy or a cunt, but at the end of the day, spoilers, he's still gonna die of whatever disease. Was it like?
Well,
TB?
It's good to know because
oh shit, you haven't played it?
No. I bought it on PC and it ran like, you know, bleep.
Shit.
And,
Shit.
I mean, I was thinking of a worse word than shit.
So,
I mean,
actually, it's interesting that you bring up Red Dead Redemption 2 because that was one of my absolute favorite games in the world, but it does still have this kind of element of a ludonarrative.
Like ludonarrative dissonance?
Yes.
Or, yeah.
Sorry, I'm really fucking stupid.
No, he's drunk.
Ludonarrative dissonance.
yes.
But I'm both.
And maybe explain that because not everyone will know what that means.
Okay, Richard's even more drunk and stupid than I am. So, ludonarrative dissonance is basically your character having a certain personality which is not represented in gameplay. I think that kind of covers it, but the kind of prime example is Uncharted, in which your character is happy-go-lucky, super positive, but just absolutely fucking murders everybody.
Yeah, for sure.
Despite preaching fairness and things like that. Not to say that I don't love Uncharted, but I think that Red Dead Redemption suffers from that because there's such a massive choice architecture, but the character arc in that game is basically redemption. Red Dead Redemption, of course. It is redemption of Arthur Morgan. The entire story is him becoming a better person.
Or choosing to become a better person.
But is it? Because at the end of the day, you can do whatever you want.
I mean, I killed everyone so far.
Exactly.
And then I refunded the game because it ran like shit.
You can do everything that you want, but then the cutscenes are going to be exactly the same, except for the fact that in some cutscenes you'll have a wolf, and in some you'll have a deer, and that is an indication of where you are on the honor scale.
Although no, in the ending it can differ. Like there was like one of the characters.
True, a little bit,
Yeah, sorry.
The core, once it's on Steam, but it's expensive.
The core narrative of Red Dead Redemption is always the same.
Yeah, like on the most part. Yeah,
and it's generally on the more, like, I guess your character is progressing side of things, but you kind of, if you're the type of person that's gonna play Arthur as if he's a complete piece of shit, you're gonna have some inconsistencies there.
That's true.
And with L.A. Noire, it's the opposite. Well, I guess not the opposite, but they kind of solve ludonarrative dissonance because they just don't give you the fucking choice.
Yeah.
Oh my god, you're awful.
Oh, give me a break! Okay, shut up.
Alright,
okay,
we'll do this better next time.
Anyway, I don't even know where we left off, but...
Yeah, we had a break, by the way.
I might need another one soon.
We had another couple drinks on our break, but we finished by talking about games that define the decade.
Yeah.
Skyrim for Reese.
Yeah.
Obvious.
Nerd.
League of Legends for Richard. Obvious.
I mean, is it? I hate League of Legends.
Coming in with a hot take was me, of course, L.A. Noire. As I forget which philosopher said this, but you can't have one leg in the past and one leg in the present because then you're just pissing on the future. Fuck, I fucked that up.
Then you're just kind of half pissing on the past.
Then you're weird. You're leaning forward.
Yeah.
You can't have one leg in the past and one leg in the future because then you're pissing in the present.
Yes, exactly.
That's what you meant.
But everybody does. So let's focus on the leg that's in the future. What is everybody's most? I guess what games are you very interested in for 2020?
I mean game.
What game?
Pick
are
one
you
game because we've been here for so long. Because we keep drinking and
so
pissing.
We'll start with Reese.
Yeah, that's me. Right, so we were talking earlier about environmental storytelling and how, like, Jeremy loved that with Control. I liked it with Control. Richard didn't play Control yet, but he will when he gets his new graphics card.
And Sekiro.
And Sekiro when he gets his new graphics card. So yeah, my pick is The Last of Us Part 2. And like apart from Control, The first Last of Us, by Naughty Dog, who also made Uncharted, who we talked about earlier. Basically, their environmental storytelling was also fucking sublime. Like Last of Us, the main plot was amazing. Like it's a post-apocalypse kind of, I don't know, that's very typical these days. But it's very story driven. Like it does have this post-apocalyptic through line, but then you collect all these like notes and stories of characters who lived in that world, and it's so like believable. But I think there was a demo for The Last of Us Part 2. I can't remember when it was. It was either E3 or Gamescom or the Game Awards or something.
I mean, there's been content for that game out since E3.
Yeah. Probably even like 2017, 2018.
Yeah. I mean, there's been a lot of hype for it.
Yeah, but there's been a lot of like as games get like more realistic, like they have like the games are very violent, obviously, and there has to be some kind of back, something coming back to you from that. And like the demo I saw of Last of Us Part 2, like every character, every enemy character in the game like has a name. Even the dogs have a name. So like if you kind of like shoot an enemy character, like one of their companions would be like, oh no, you killed Trevor or something, or you killed Trevor and Trevor's dog's there. Trevor's dog will kind of come over to Trevor and be like, very, very fucking sad that his owner's dead. And yeah, it's just kind of like makes it feel more real, right? It's very depressing, it's very dark, it's very, disgusting almost, but that's how this would be if it were real life. And it's very dark, it's very gritty, but I like that. It's less of this kind of, games of this playground where you just, go in and kill everybody. There's no consequence. Like you have that like moral, boulder like attached to you. It's just...
No, yeah, definitely. I mean, I think one of the first times where I was kind of marked by that kind of, I guess you'd call it barking, which is secondary dialogue that NPCs have.
Yeah.
I think Ghost Recon Breakpoint, as disappointing as that game was.
Breakpoint was okay.
Was it?
It was not great.
No, it was.
But,
was that last
no,
year's game?
I'm thinking of Wildlands. Okay,
Yeah,
Breakpoint was a piece of shit. Yeah.
But in Breakpoint, there was one fantastic moment, which was you'd be taking on a base and you would shoot some dude in the head, and they'd be like, "Oh fuck, the new guy! They shot the new guy!" And you'd be like, "Damn!"
Oh shit! It's like it's his first day.
I mean, like there was so much wrong about that game when it came to immersion, but that was fantastic. I mean, I loved that. It didn't make me feel anything, but it made me feel comedy because those barks were actually very entertaining, and they added to that element of the game. And I'm really looking forward to that as well in Last of Us Part 2. And on top of that, I mean, Neil Druckmann has proven, and he's the creative director for Last of Us Part 2, but he was also that for the Last of Us, the initial one.
Yeah, I think as well Uncharted 4 as well.
Yeah. But I think he rose to fame through The Last of Us.
Yeah, that was like the big one, because there was Amy Hennig who did like Uncharted 3, and that was kind of like divisive. I thought it was really good what she did, but yeah, Neil Druckmann is like
he's strong.
Yeah, he's the driver of Naughty Dog.
And there were some extremely emotional moments in The Last of Us, so I'm very excited for The Last of Us Part 2. I think it's safe to say that that's going to be on anybody with a PlayStation
Richard?
At their house.
Richard, you gonna play
It's going to be on their list. Richard,
I've never played The Last of Us. And
well, that explains why your game of the year is Total War.
Ouch. No,
but
Total War's good.
So you don't have a PlayStation in your house?
No, I do.
Yeah, he does.
You do?
I have a PlayStation. I've had it for a long time. I don't have an Xbox, but I used to have an Xbox.
So why the fuck haven't you played The Last
Because
of Us?
it was great for Netflix until I got a smart TV, and I haven't turned it on.
Okay.
Richie.
So
there's a few games. So there's Horizon Zero Dawn. Hopefully, it still comes on PC. If not, well, I won't play it.
No, I mean you can play it on PS Now if you want to stream it to your PC. But
and there's like God of War, which sounds interesting. It's just not my thing. But Mass Effect used to be back, before it went to shit.
Yeah, with Andromeda.
But so, given that you use your PlayStation as a Netflix machine, which
dust gathering machine right now.
Sorry, dust gathering machine. One of our probably one viewers that are remaining at this point.
Yeah. Or zero.
Will be offended by that, but given that you're not playing on any kind of console, what's your most anticipated game of the year?
So I'm sticking to strategy for next year, even though there's Cyberpunk coming out, which is very anticipated, very likely to disappoint all the hype.
Why do you say that?
Because everything with this amount of hype will always be disappointing to at least half of the people that are hyped.
Why are you talking about Rise of the Skywalker now? Or
No. What you mean? Oh, I haven't seen that yet.
Oh, okay.
So
get ready to either be very impressed or very disappointed.
You know what? I'll probably enjoy that because it's a movie, and just have to sit back, eat popcorn, and drink.
So you're basically saying that CD Projekt Red has a lot of attention on it right now, and The Witcher 3 was, phenomenal, but there was no hype or build. Well, there was some for core fans, but there wasn't really a mass audience that was interested at the time. Sorry, I got the.
Yeah,
ear
no, it's
hiccups.
fine.
It's
So,
okay,
so
it's
what
good.
to be more serious, I think Cyberpunk will be great for most people. I think a lot of the press around it will be semi-negative because it doesn't live up to all the expectations that are there of a small or decently sized group.
$10.
Yeah.
Oh.
Deal. $10. No, 2 beers. Wait, 3 beers. $10 is 3 beers.
What
Wait,
is
what
what
kind
is
of
the
beers? Free
what is
beers
the
or-
actual bet? We need
Yeah.
something
So,
quantifiable.
so
I am saying it will not live up to the hype. So what that means is that
you're saying that the news will rate it negatively.
will be divisive.
Device.
All right,
Yeah.
let's go on Metacritic score then.
Metacritic
no,
score.
Let's say
No,
that
for the
there's
media, that's a good.
I'll
Alright,
take
let's-
I'll take above 70 on Metacritic from critics.
No, I'm saying
No,
saying
no.
40 to 60% positive versus negative, and negative is starting 60 and below.
Oh, but like the
So you're
games
below
review
60.
metric is so like
Yeah, no,
on
so
the top. I think
it's bullshit.
no, I think below 80 would be like a critical
Okay,
disaster.
Yeah,
So
exactly. So-
I'll take above 80.
All right, I'll
on
take
Metacritic.
below. I think below 80 on Metacritic. And
$10 and one beer.
let's do something more interesting.
Oh yes, please.
So instead of the $10, so the 16th of April is when it comes out. So at the end of April, hopefully we'll still be doing this podcast.
Maybe
Probably not.
Probably not, but
One
if
and
we
done.
are, if we are, we're gonna talk about the most embarrassing game we've ever played. Oh, you dropped your. So and total honesty, the most embarrassing game you've ever played, the story behind it, and why you played it.
I'm so glad I'm not involved in this.
Reese,
Yeah, that's fine.
if it's a 50-50 between us, if we can't decide, you're fucked.
Well, so if it's dead on 80,
but
then
it has
I-
monetary value. I mean,
What do you mean?
So let's do.
Why is there a
let's
monetary
do,
value?
well, just for you and me.
All right.
So
Beers.
we'll do that.
I'll
Beers.
buy you a nice beer.
A 3-stack of fancy beers
Yeah.
and the most embarrassing
Yeah.
game that we've ever played. That's fine.
That's
Yeah.
good, yeah.
I mean, I'm an open book. I don't know about you.
But
We shall see.
Yeah. All right. So if it gets 80 or above, Jeremy wins, or if it gets 79 or below, Richard wins.
Yeah, I'm a bit worried because IGN loves second. Oh wait, no.
But they're just one part of the metric, you know.
Okay.
But let's talk about it and see how
So-
it goes.
Cyberpunk.
No, but my most anticipated game is a strategy game, and it's Humankind, and it's made by the same people that made Endless Legends, which wasn't that great.
Yeah. What is Endless Legends, by the way? I have no idea.
So there's
Yeah,
Endless
me neither.
Legends, and there are 4X games. So
Okay, yeah.
turn-based strategy games like Civilization, and I definitely had enough beers right now. But I think Civ is great, and there will never be a game I spent more time on than Civ when it comes to 4X,
Yeah, fair enough.
because I have spent so much time on it already.
And
But
4X is like a genre, by the
yeah.
way.
However, Humankind is. Think about Civ, and every time you advance to a new age, you can choose a different civilization, a different way to go.
Yeah.
Which means you're not stuck with the same civilization, but you can tell your own story and grow through the ages. Because when you think about it, when you think about history, everyone was part of the Roman Empire in Europe at some point. Things like that. So that's where it comes from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can switch every age, and I think that will give definitely a breath of fresh air that is needed in that genre, because while the hexagon, is it hexagon or I don't know.
Yeah, 6 sides, yeah.
Yeah, it's a hexagon these days, and not octagon. That's from.
Or it could be. Don't
No,
confuse
it's
me.
a
No, I think it's a
I
he-
think
it's
it
a
is
hexagon.
hexagon.
No, octagon
That's-
is from the good old Terry Pratchett days when the octagon was a.
Terry Pratchett.
Yeah, I love the books, and the octagon was a very important. That doesn't matter.
Yeah, Richard
Anyway,
reads
Yeah,
books.
I mean, I'm also very excited for Humankind. I loved Civ 5, which is a lot older than you would think, actually.
Yeah.
But fuck.
Yeah, but
I loved Civ 5, and I also really enjoyed Civ 6, but I think I enjoyed Civ 6 because I liked Civ 5 so much.
Yeah, and recently it's getting better, but there's bits of it that are just not as enjoyable. Like the religion aspect isn't. It's too active. It's not, and things like that.
It's also just, I mean, the technology has progressed since then, and as well as innovation, and humankind is bringing that to the table.
Yeah, you know, guys, I wasn't excited about humankind before this podcast, and now I'm like still not very excited.
No.
If
you don't like strategy games, I mean, do you like grand strategy games? Crusader Kings?
Nobody's excited about humankind
Except
for
me
you
and you.
and that's fine because I'm also bringing something that is not exciting at all.
Yeah, what's your game?
Not sexy. My most anticipated game of 2020 is Flight Simulator.
I mean, yes.
Flight Simulator 2020 is so interesting from a technological perspective that I just can't fucking wait to fuck around in it. I mean, even the gameplay demos have been so enthralling where you, I mean, drive a plane through a city? Yeah. Any city you want? Yeah. Sign me up.
Sign me off, like fuck that.
I'm going to buy it. I'm going to spend $60+ on it. Euros, maybe.
Yeah,
and
euros.
I'm going to play it for an entire 40 minutes and then never touch it again, but I will not regret it. I mean, real talk. Flight Simulator 2020, I think, will be very interesting for the flight simulator genre because if you look at previous flight simulator games, specifically the Microsoft ones, the advancement in technology is really representative of the past 10 to 20 years of games technology. And the game looks absolutely stunning for what it is. And while there's a big list of games that I'm really excited to play and that I will likely have more fun playing, I think that the game that I'm most excited to see launch and succeed and even play is Flight Simulator 2020, just because of what it represents from a technological perspective.
Yeah, isn't there like some like machine learning or like map aspect where you can just like fly around anywhere? Like I read a news article about it last year, but
from what I remember, there's 3 different kinds of basically world building technologies that are at play.
Yeah.
And to some extent they can update in real time. So you can be in a varying amount of detail depending on which city you're deciding to fly through. But you will be able to fly almost anywhere in the world in a 3D perspective, and as long as you're flying over the city, it will look like your hometown, which is just so fucking interesting.
Is that like Google Maps shit? Like how do they do it?
Better. It's
better.
Bing.
Oh, Bing. Bing.
Oh, Bing is. I'm gonna use Bing from now on. No, but going back to Flight Simulator. So in 1996,
when Jeremy was just a twinkle in the milkman's eye.
I was actually 1 year old.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I got my first PC, and the first game I got was Transport Tycoon. In 1997, I got a new game, and it was called IF-22, and it was a flight simulator game. And you can look it up. I can show you this here. You flew an IF-22, which was a great plane, as you can see.
I don't
For
know
listeners, it
planes.
looks like
shit.
Actually looks okay.
I mean, this is 1990s.
Is that FMV, like actual video of?
I have actually. This is the game. This is what it looked like. This is how you flew around.
Yeah, it looks like shit.
It is one of the first. Cause what was there, right? I played Roller Coaster Tycoon, Jazz Kit Rabbit, or
Jessica Rabbit.
Jazz Kit Rabbit. Or
Jazz Kit Rabbit.
Yeah. I think it's Jessica Rabbit.
No.
But not just. I mean, Who Framed Roger Rabbit? Eh?
That's true.
That is a classic. Anyway,
It's a banger.
it was a banger. Yes.
Yeah, we're drunk, guys. We're
What the fuck are we
drunk.
talking about?
I don't know.
Do you know-
Talk about your shitty game.
Yeah.
And it was one of the first games I played, and in my heart, over the years, simulation games and flying simulation games have been great. I haven't built a giant setup, But the idea of the freedom that you have with the new flight simulator is pretty amazing, because back then even crashing into this blocky green landscape, which was supposedly your hometown, was pretty interesting.
I'm very excited.
Yeah, I can't wait to crash into my hometown. Fuck yeah.
Swansea.
We are
Swansea.
being sarcastic here. If you're from the FBI or anywhere else,
Should we say where we're from actually?
I mean, I think we already have
yeah, we live in a country
of nethers.
Yeah, it's a land of nethers.
the land, not down under, but not really. It's under the sea.
The lowlands.
Think about SpongeBob, but then above water.
Yeah.
And colder.
But actually we are below water.
And no pineapples, except on my pizzas.
True, Italians will, say no. But basically, we all live in Amsterdam. We all work in the games industry. I'm from Wales in the UK, Swansea. Jeremy, where are you from? Some fucking shithole.
Yeah.
Not like Swansea.
Not like Swansea. I'm from Los Angeles, California, but
Such a
also-
douchebag.
I'm from Los Angeles.
I'm like from Los Angeles
I'm a
and
real cool
California,
film dude.
bruh.
I did film and study things.
All right.
That's it. And and I'm also part French, so I'm not all bad.
Oh, I mean,
I'm even
you
worse
just
in
made
some
it worse,
aspects.
yeah. You know how bad you're.
I'm
worse.
even worse in some aspects.
I'm
and
not
then,
good fromage.
Where are you
what,
from?
what are you?
Dutchie?
Just Dutch.
I'm from Gouda. Actually,
What? He's got
Gouda.
something in his throat, guys.
Gouda. You know the cheese? That's where I was born.
Yeah, but we call it Gouda.
Oh, Gouda.
Oh, you call it Gouda. We call it Gouda. What do you call it?
Gouda.
No, it's
Why,
Gouda.
guys, he's got something in his throat.
No,
What?
you're mispronouncing it, Richard. It's Gouda.
Yeah,
Gouda.
Gouda.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
No, it's
I mean,
Gouda.
saying the word as it was meant to be said is wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I get why you voted for your current president.
Gouda
Oh,
aside.
And you know
Anyway.
why I didn't say the name of the president? Because it will always be true.
What? Anyway, I think we've kind of lived up to the drunken outro that Jeremy promised.
Oh wait, I have a
Hold on,
script.
oh,
I have a
wait,
script.
yeah.
I have a script.
Right.
Hang on. Did you say
Oh, wait,
your
go
game,
ahead.
Jeremy?
What?
I'm game.
No, did you say your game?
Yeah, I have 22.
I don't know.
Here, I have 22. My abandonware.
Oh, yeah.
What are you talking? All right, guys. I have a script.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go.
Follow the script.
Should I read it with the typos or not?
Yeah, with the typos.
Yes.
Are they my typos?
It has a 5.9
even
out
better.
of 10.
They're bad.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks everybody for joining. We're
You are
excited
welcome.
to be kicking this off. Actually, this is very true. We are very excited to be kicking this off, and we want to kind of like the goal for this is to bring a more lighthearted but also relevant, I guess, angle to games culture and inform the podcast public on what games culture looks like, what's going on in the space, talk about what's going on in the space, and talk about it in a relevant way that isn't so purely business focused.
Yeah.
Even though we do have a lot of business relevance to back everything that we say. So obviously, if you couldn't tell, this episode is really testing the waters. But I think that we'll be getting to some other episodes in the coming weeks. And I think the best that you could all do as far as keeping up to date is to follow us on socials as well as Spotify. And you can also be sure to receive updates about when our next podcast is. And obviously, as every podcast says, don't be afraid to reach out to us because we want to know what your game of the year is, what the most influential game of your decade was. I mean, we all shared a decade, but we shared different games.
Yeah, that's true.
But also, what are you looking forward to in the future? And I think we're going to find an interesting topic to talk about in the next
Week.
episode.
Yeah.
Week.
Yeah, this was fun.
Yeah, this is fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell us about your game of the year, game of the generation, game of the future.
Yeah.
And look out for us because we're coming.
Yeah, we're coming. And like we literally haven't made any of our social platforms or anything right now, so check in the episode description to find them because they don't exist.
We might change our name.
Yeah, we don't even have a name yet, guys.
No,
like,
it's
fuck.
the international.
Yeah, I did the intro. Guys,
Yeah.
check.
Yeah.
Dragon Game.
No. The Dragon Game.
Dragon Gaming. Oh my god, I have a.
No, we're gonna do Dragon Gaming.
Oh yeah, we're gonna do it.
We're gonna do it.
All right.
No, I don't want your Twitter.
No, I have a Twitter.
I don't want that toxic
used,
shit.
Yeah, go on. No, he does. Go
No,
on.
I haven't used my Twitter since I worked at my previous company, which is a long time ago. I have no
Richard,
idea what it is.
Where can we find you on Twitter?
Not. Just add me on Steam, which is, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm
All right.
on Twitter. I'm HappyGeist. I have not activated my account in 2 years. Reese.
Yeah, I'm a Super Reese. That's Superhys. I still kind of use it. But yeah, I guess that's it. You know, follow if you want to. If you don't want to, that's fine.
Yeah,
Fuck
do
off.
you know it's a free? It's 2020.